G'day everybody, welcome to your lecture on the limits of play. So in part 1, I emphasised that we can't discount media panics as irrelevant. Understanding discourses around games can be really helpful. In part 2, I explored how transgressive play is still play. Just because it's a bit nasty doesn't mean it's not play. But I've constantly been reiterating that it's important to recognise that there are differences between media. Literature can give us a character's point of view, but films and TV often do not. This can cause issues. Something that's acceptable in one media might not be acceptable in another. It's this idea we're going to explore in this part. What are the limits of play? The required reading for this week analyzes the limits of placing certain themes within a game using Erving Goffman's theory of frame analysis. It looks at 3 games where Nazis are playable: Brothers in Arms, Hell's Highway, Battle of the Bulge, and Memoir 44. Whether or not Nazis are playable is, as this reading explores, a highly contentious topic in the games design industry. Now, we'll remember Erving Goffman and his theory of dramaturgy from our week on identity and roleplay. Goffman's frame analysis is about how conceptual frames structure our experience of society. Basically, it's about the way that experience is organized. It's about how people make sense of social situations and what individuals collectively believe to be the definition of the situation to be at that given time, and what might happen if you get it wrong. The frame is really just what's going on. If this were a normal lecture theatre, it'd be how you know that you could walk into this moment frozen in time and you would know that I was the lecturer and these are the students and this is what everybody should be doing. Shutting up and listening and getting off Facebook. When something is portrayed in a game, it gains a new layer of ludic meaning. Within the game frame, the chair in musical chairs suddenly means a lot more than it did before. It means you could have 10 identical chairs, but the ones that are still in play mean something different to the ones that aren't. Or maybe a flagpole in a game of chess is transformed by the game frame into something that represents a safe haven. Now, Gary Allen Fine wrote a book in 1982 about Dungeons & Dragons titled Shared Fantasy. And he contributed to the discipline of he contributed to frame analysis, this idea of keying. Playful fighting is up-keying a real fight away from what we would consider real. It's one of the first books to study kind of gaming in a serious way. And Dungeons & Dragons is, of course, a really interesting game for this kind of study, right? Because it's a play situation where there are multiple simultaneous frames. And Miguel Sicart applies some of these ideas in the next part of the lecture. Gary Allen Fine suggests that the gaming frame, that there's this thing called the gaming frame, where there's a shared distinction between, say, players and characters, and it's how we make sense of what is going on during play. Goffman and Fine have a lot of really useful concepts for helping us understand how it is that people know what's going on when we're playing a game. Things like fabrications, where we lie about what's actually going on to the benefit of the game in maybe a playful deceit, or awareness contexts, which is where we manage our knowledge for some reason. If I'm trying to teach you how to play, I might look at your cards, but then I'm going to play as though I don't know what cards you have. Right? We can manage this and move between these oscillating nature of these kind of coaching frames in order to kind of maintain the legitimacy and the coherency of the game frame while we're playing. So this kind of theory of frame analysis is what Adam and Jonas apply in the required reading for this week, which explores these common conventions about how to make World War II playable, which aren't applicable to film and literature, right? Nazis and World War II is something widely portrayed in film and literature with its tropes and conventions of its own. They identify things such as referring to enemy forces as the Axis, not Nazis, Hitler is often totally omitted from World War II video games, as is the SS and the Holocaust. And the swastika is often excluded in place of the German Iron Cross. On a more general level, though, Adam Chapman and journalist Linderoth suggest that the limits to play entails 3 socio-cultural qualities. Firstly, they conclude that games seem to have an intrinsic, potentially trivializing property. Secondly, that these trivializations risk controversy, but that they can be saved by frame transformations. And 3, this makes games a form of value thermometers that reveal information about norms and values on a broader societal level, further emphasizing how the discourses around games can be really insightful. So look, I'm not here to say that playing as Nazis or playing as Hitler isn't distasteful, but to explore what these kinds of debates reveal about society and about the values we have about games. One of the things that I think is really important about this discussion is a lot of this runs the risk of whitewashing the history of World War II. I've already talked about how, in this unit, how games have a really special place as cultural objects, and as how we learn and about play, and how we learn history. What can and can't be incorporated into a game says a lot about the norms and values of the society in which the controversy arises. But are we ignoring our history by refusing to acknowledge it in this popular form of popular history? Now, one of the case studies you may talk about in the tutorials is Secret Hitler, a game that raised $1.5 million on Kickstarter and is developed by one of the people from Cards Against Humanity. Here's a description of the game. Secret Hitler is a dramatic game of political intrigue and betrayal set in 1930s Germany. Players are secretly divided into 2 teams, liberals and fascists. Known only to each other, the fascists coordinate to sow distrust and install their cold-blooded leader. The liberals must stop the secret Hitler before it's too late. And one of the players is actually playing as Hitler, assigned at random at the start of the game. Before the tutorials, if you're not familiar with Secret Hitler, it might be worth reading a little bit more about it and reading some of these articles about the game. So how do we understand something like Secret Hitler through the frame analysis? Right? Sorry, I'm apparently not going to explore Secret Hitler. I'm going to explore other examples. So frame analysis is really useful. So I'll give you a slightly different example and we can come back to Secret Hitler. Would a game where you run a mine with slave labor, whipping and shooting slow workers, be considered distasteful? Probably yes, right? If our understanding of this game's play frame is that it's about role-playing as a slave owner. However, in Phone Story, this is something that is upkeyed into an artistic or serious frame, which is not as trivializing. So we can see how there's something problematic with the play frame that might be inherently trivializing, but it's not but if we put it into an artistic or serious frame, it's perfectly acceptable and indeed is a positive critique. For the tutorial, I want you to try and find an example of a controversy about a content in a game and see if frame analysis can help you understand it better. The next part of the lecture is going to help you understand some of these ideas further. If we go back to the example of Secret Hitler, sorry about that, we might see how the game is upkeyed by the developers who try to claim that playing this game might help you understand how it was that Hitler rose to power, right? That the way that the fascists kind of sow dissent and intrigue and stop us from trusting one another, and how they co-opted a normal democratic process helps us understand how Hitler rose to power, right? By upkeying it into this possibly educational frame, they move away from some of this controversy. But of course, this relies on kind of accuracy and truth, right? Is this game actually any good at teaching you about Hitler rose to power? Or is it leveraging the kind of like taboo-ness of playing as Hitler to become a really popular party game, similar to the way that Cards Against Humanity does? So look forward to discussing these ideas in the tutorial. This is a really short block. because we're running out of time for this week. And in the next part of the lecture, we're going to be talking about what it is that makes play ethical and pulling on some of these threads that we've just explored. Thanks very much.